I invite you to settle in wherever you are, to give yourself the luxury of a bit of a pause today as we connect in mind and in heart. The beautiful pause, the deliberate pause that says or gives a message to the universe that says, I'm willing to listen. I am willing to receive. I am open to the gift, the divine pause. And so I offer today this divine pause for myself and for all who are gathered together in heart and in mind to receive exactly what it is that we need. I invite and invoke all of that which is the amazing support system that we have, all of the elements, all of the energies, all of the divine being, all of the wisdom and guidance of the ages, of the divine to come and to collaborate and co-create with us to unveil, unlock, and distribute to us everything that speaks to the highest and best, that delivers to us that beautiful particularized gift. We say yes to that. We say yes to that. We say yes to that. And let us breathe in together. Let us nurture and know that all is well, all is divine. Ah, all is divine. And so it is. All is divine and all is active, and people are texting and saying, hey, I love it. It's wonderful. Um, so, good morning, good morning. Um, so happy to be with you today because um, one of the things that brings enthusiasm to my own heart is the gift of appreciation. And we toss around a lot at this time of the year the word independence, independence. But you know, life is interdependent. Nature is interdependent upon all other types of surroundings. You and I are interdependent upon other beings from the moment that we were born. And there is gifts and there is beauty in that interdependence, and it's good. It's good medicine for you and I to pause and to acknowledge that which has served us in that field of interdependence. And so all of life, again, think about it, all of life is interdependent. You and I would not be here if it wasn't for other people. And it is interdependence that actually is the gateway for our independence. So you and I are here because of other people. You and I are here, yes, with basic freedoms, but also with freedoms of the heart, um, freedoms and understandings of courage and of choice and of education and of deepening and of connection. All of those things are intertwined. And so it's good to pause and to think about that. And that's what this morning is devoted to. So I was thinking years ago when I lived in Los Angeles, I used to drive to a place called Huntington Gardens. Beautiful, beautiful spot in Southern California. And one of the things that I loved about Huntington Gardens is that they had signs everywhere that said, please walk on the grass. My kind of place. I loved it. Please walk on the grass. There was no signs of don't do this, don't do that. It was a welcoming place for anyone to go and to pause and to find respite and replenishment. And I remember specifically one day, who knows what earthly human drama I was experiencing, but I drove to Huntington Gardens and I was sitting under a tree and I could hear the conversation of a docent of the garden, someone who was a tour guide and a leader, walking around with a group of people, explaining all of the different species of plants and of flowers that were in bloom. And one particular thing that this docent said caught my mind. So he was talking about the attractiveness of the flowers and the way in which the vibrancy of their blooms or the things that attract our eye. We immediately go to the flashy, to the beautiful, to the blooming. And he said, but what you don't realize is that those blooming flowers are bordered by what we call agriculturally or horticulturally as lids. In other words, there are plants that frame all of those blooming flowers. They help it stand out. They give it distinction. They give it vibrancy. They frame it, literally frame it to make it outstanding. And he goes, our eyes really don't necessarily often go to those things that are the lids or the framework of these blooms. But if you love plants and you understand the interdependence of these plants, you realize how important those that act as the lids are. Stuck in my mind. And around the same time, I was in my kitchen in Los Angeles, and I was making my routine morning smoothie. Lots of things, lots of thoughts going on in my head. I put all the ingredients into the blender, and I pressed whirl, and a big explosion in my kitchen as everything flew all over the cabinets, all over the sink, everything, all over me. And it was because I didn't put the lid onto the blender. And second time in a equidistant frame of understanding, I'm getting this reference of the lid. And I realized that a blender is useless without a lid. And that experience made me think of the lid as something that is safe, as something that allows us to have whatever experience is going on in the blender of life. It doesn't prevent that, but it provides a container for us to have our experience until that experience wanes or until that experience lessens. So it's there. It's a safe space. And I realized that, like the plant that the docent was talking about, as well as the lid of the blender that I experienced firsthand, that there are people in our lives who are lids. They are the ones that provide the framework, the interdependence of you and I to be able to shine, to be able to do whatever it is that we do. They are the people who don't necessarily get the credit. They are the people who aren't necessarily the ones up in front, but they are, to use a very tired analogy, the wind beneath our wings. They are the ones that gift us with believability. They are the ones who provide the safe container by which we live life from a non-judgment place, but we know that they're there. And as we celebrate something called Independence Day in the United States, wouldn't it be lovely if there was an Interdependence Day? A day where we thoughtfully and honorably acknowledged those people who have been our lids. And of course, I would think if we took the time to really sit down and document that and to think about that, that there would be many who got us to where we are today. Obviously, there are those who will stand out. Obviously, there are teachers and educators and spiritual guides and relationships, all kinds of things that have gotten us to where we are, that we have been interdependent of. But it's always good to pause, because when we think about spiritual law and the dynamics of spiritual law, then what we appreciate appreciates. In other words, what we give gratitude to expands. And the more that we can become accustomed to expressing that genuine gratitude, that deep respect to those people who have been our lids, the more that we will begin to notice or have the experience of other people doing the same. And again, the way that we experience that is by being that for other people. And so I remember at that time there was a popular movie out called Billy Elliot. And that's the story about the young farm boy who wanted to dance. And that was taboo in his poor upbringing and culture. But there was a teacher who saw his potential and nurtured him. And I remember when I was watching the movie being fascinated by the teacher, this woman who took so much depth and time and instruction and care to make sure that this boy thrived. I would think about her own storyline, even though it wasn't in the movie. I was like, how did that teacher get there? Perhaps she had desired the same thing that Billy Elliot did, but maybe there was no one there who took the depth and the breadth of time and nurturing that she was taking with him. Because I'm sure that her love of dance and the origin of that love was as passionate as the character of Billy Elliot. And so I fell in love with the character of the teacher. And even though that narrative is not the main part of the movie, it's something that I always notice in books, in film. It's those support systems. And so last night, good friends are house sitting at a place that had a home theater where the screen is almost as large as a wall. And we watched Hamilton the musical. And I had not seen it, and I was so excited to be able to watch it. Same thing happened as I was watching Hamilton. I became obsessed with Eliza, the wife. I became so absorbed and interested in her. I wanted to know more about her. In the very end of the musical, she sings a couple of lines about what happens post Hamilton's life and what she was to accomplish, and the fact that she opened the first orphanage in what is now New York City, and was this advocate for social reform for children. And those are the types of people, that it was the Eliza, when you really do what's beyond the musical, when I was Googling all night, Eliza Hamilton, and realizing the depth of this woman and her own courage and her own action, the things that don't often get acknowledged. Same thing with a current story about Frederick Douglass, the slave who became well known for his freedom stance and his influence and his intellect with regards to the abolitionist in that movement and the freeing of African American people. But a meme caught my eye because it was of his wife. Didn't know this. One of his wives, Anna Murray Douglass. Anna Murray Douglass is the woman who actually helped Frederick Douglass escape. It was Anna Murray Douglass who, with her own meager funding, nurtured him, got him clothes, made sure that he was housed, who did all of these things to buoy Frederick Douglass into becoming the name that he was. But guess what? History doesn't even begin to acknowledge Anna Murray Douglass. Again, another lid, someone who provided a platform for someone else to excel. So that makes me think about the Buddhist practice of what is called the four immeasurables, or I wrote down here, they're also referred to as the four sublime states of mind. This is the act of interdependence at its most conscious. And so those four immeasurables are loving kindness. To notice, to witness in someone the genuine act of tender, authentic love and kindness for all sentient beings. Those are the kinds of people you wanna draw yourself to. And that is the kind of person that we strive and aim to uncover within our own behavior. The next one is compassion. To be able to sit in the storm of upset, and to be able to sit in the deep well of disappointment and agony, and to be able to empathetically nurture and hold someone wherever that state of being is. True, authentic compassion. And again, to the degree that we offer that to other people is the way in which we receive that compassion. Crucial to interdependence. Another one is appreciative joy. Have you ever been with someone who is head over heels excited for your accomplishment? Someone so deeply proud, so expressive in their exuberance for a win that you have experienced, that it just bursts your heart open with love. The people that don't look at you competitively, the people who don't look at you in order to get something, but people who genuinely are appreciative in their joy for your wins, for your successes. Again, a crucial part of interdependence and one of the Buddhist four immeasurables. And the last one is equanimity, the ability to see everyone as equal. And so when you are fortunate enough to cross paths with someone in your life who exhibits these things, whether they even realize that they're doing this or not, but they just are this at the very core of their being. They are loving kindness and expression. They are compassionate. They have appreciative joy, and they exhibit equanimity at its finest. That is something to celebrate, and it is something to strive for to be. Again, what we are, we attract. If you want a friend, be a friend. All of those notable laws of our spiritual existence, right? And so, pause today and think about, who are your lids? Who are your lids? Exactly 11 years ago today, I arrived back in the United States after being away on a sabbatical that took me to Spain, where I walked the Camino de Santiago across the entire country of Spain. Started in the base of France at the bottom of the Pyrenees, and then trekked all across the northern rim of Spain to Santiago de Compostela. A famous, amazing pilgrimage that I believe everyone should do. It was a pivotal life shift for me. My mother had just died. That had been a tumultuous relationship in and of itself. I was at a personal crossroads, and it was also something that I had wanted to do for a very, very, very long time, and had saved my pennies to be able to do it. And so, in order to get back from Spain, I was living in Mobile, Alabama at the time, and I was going to fly into Atlanta, where I live now. And so someone that I had just recently met in Mobile, Alabama, offered to pick me up on the day that I was scheduled to get back. She was going to drive from Mobile, Alabama, all the way to Atlanta to the airport to pick me up and drive me all the way back to Mobile, Alabama. She said that it would be no problem for her because she had already scheduled in that same time frame to have a business meeting with somebody in Atlanta, so it was going to work perfectly for her. And I thought, oh my God, this is great. So I don't have to worry about how am I going to get home, particularly after walking across an entire country and then navigating my way back. I had no idea what state of mind I would be in or physical condition that I would be in. So I could rest assured that this person was going to be there. And that happened 11 years ago today. And that person is one of my, the most deepest connected friend you could ask for, Tracy Owens. I don't know what I did in other lives to deserve a friend like her, but wow, just wow. So I'm glad that worlds opened up in order for us to be able to meet in Mobile, Alabama, and to convince her to move here to Atlanta, for her to even be a roommate today. But she was the one that offered to come. And what's so amazing about that story, about her picking me up, is that that business meeting was canceled. And she still drove all that way just to pick me up. And I think when we have people that are near and dear to us in our hearts, we might get offers like that all the time, because that's just what we do for people that we love. I wasn't accustomed to that, or I should say that I had not learned how to welcome something like that in. And it was overwhelming to me. It was overwhelming that someone would drive over 6 hours to come and pick me up and then drive 6 hours back. And yeah, I was exhausted and overcome and emotional, and it had been a life-changing experience. I believe I slept most of the way in her car with the car seat down. But that's a prime example of the beauty of interdependence. And I will love her forever, and love her forever and ever, and cherish her. And another friend, pretty much becoming acquainted after being in Atlanta, is someone that showed up when I was the minister at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. And this is another classic example of a lid. Someone who is not front and center, but someone who lets you, if you have to be front and center, if that's a part of your work, lets you do that work. And then they do their work as the frame, as the stability, as the day-to-day, as the one who is overseeing and managing all the things so that you can do the job that you were there to do. And he became my executive director at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. His name is David Ault. And again, one of the most joyous collaborations I have ever been privileged to experience. Because of David Ault, I was able to be better at my job as a minister. Because of that, because of his his dedication, man, his meticulousness to detail, his creativity, his collaborativeness, his ability to tell me no. Because a lot of times, as a visionary, we're all visionaries, but when I border on that inconstancy, he's the one that has to bring me back in and say, no, not now. And so it was a partnership at its most finest. I would like to think that was my experience. I don't know, you'll have to ask him. And I mourn for other ministers who don't have a David Ault, because you wouldn't think of any other company trying to manage with a CEO doing it on his or her own. You wouldn't think of any organization functioning with one person doing all of the work. And yet I see that oftentimes in the spiritual world, particularly in small movements or small churches or centers, all of the weight of that responsibility is left on one person. And so there's not an interdependence, a healthy interdependence of letting the one who was called to lead at their most effective. And so this is sort of a love letter, if you will, to Tracy and to David and to all of the other people as I think about it and as I swim in gratitude this morning for how blessed I am to have had many individuals say yes to me with their heart, to say yes to me. You know, it was Tracy and David who were constantly there through all of my physical challenges, through my mishaps. And there were mishaps. Oh my God, I would do so many crazy things and wind up in the hospital, and I'd open my eyes and there would be David or Tracy. And they'd both be just looking at me and smiling and going, well, here we are again. And they would laugh because it would all be about the cute doctors. and there was never any judgment on their part. There was never any inconvenience on their part. They loved me through all of the bumps and the bruises, and they still do. And they did all the way up to major heart surgery. They were the ones that were there by my side. And those people deserve to be acknowledged. Those people deserve their moment in the spotlight. Those people with their own gifts and talents and their extraordinary lives need to be seen. The Eliza Hamiltons of this world need to be known. Ooh, the Anna Murray Douglasses of this world need to be known. And so I want to offer you today a beautiful invitation to contact those people. If they're still alive, if they're still walking the planet, to tell them how much the interdependent relationship with them has meant to you. That because of them, you are experiencing the freedoms that you are experiencing. Because of them, you are where you are. And you have hope in your heart. And you, up until your last breath, when you leave this world, you will know what friendship is. You will know what love is. You will know what it means to be championed. And this is what's before us. And this is what our world needs to be reminded of. Not now, but yeah, especially now, but always, at all times. And so if that person who is your lid happens to be in the same household as you, don't assume that they know. Go and tell them. Tell them what their support, tell them what their nurturing means to you. Pick a specific thing that they did, outline that, illustrate that with your words, and tell them how much that meant to you. Write to people, call them, whatever it is. Because through that contact, we can continue to buoy one another up. And it is in the interdependence of all of us finding a commonality, a thing to aim of what our spiritual movement says, a world that works for everybody. Everybody needs to know that they matter. Everybody needs to know that their gifts counted for something. And so let the giver know. Let the giver know. Thank you so much again. Just so you know, I've figured out how to transfer all of these Facebook Lives over to my YouTube channel. And so if you're ever on YouTube and you put my name into the search engine, give a like or a follow on YouTube, and starting to upload a lot of material and refine that as well. that's a way to just stay in touch as well as through social media. If you want to go to my website, I'm excited to say that finally enough funds came in for me to be able to revamp that. So all of July is going to be about revamping my website. And I feel energized and excited as I continue to work on my new book. And I'm hopeful. I'm anticipating with an energy of gratitude of what the future lies ahead. And I know that I can do that because of all of the people who have been my knit. And you are my knit as well. God bless you. And thank you for being with me on these Sundays.